Thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're having a conversation with young people in different sectors ahead of the International Youth Day, which is set for tomorrow, the 12th of August. The theme this year is Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World. But we're expanding this conversation and talking about inclusion and several other issues within the youth space. Have they been included enough? What more needs to be done? That's the main question. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Honorable S.C. Okenyuri is here with us still. Nominated Senator. Honorable Mulher Harun, nominated MP, is here with us. Jennifer Gidhu, Anti-Corruption Specialist, UNODC, is also with us, and Philip Pande, Youth Inclusion Advisor. And Jen, you're the one who brought up this issue of meaningful involvement, which does not necessarily mean the same thing as more representation. So what does meaningful involvement look like? Because you heard what AC is saying, that sometimes you can't come in with a policy that simply because you're a young person or you're a woman and expect to get support. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. So it's not that they're not doing their bit. What does meaningful inclusion then mean?
For me, meaningful engagement is engagement beyond representation. You could be on the table, but you're not representing the group or the demographic you seek to represent effectively. And this borrows into some of the discussions we were having over the break, that are the young people that are represented in these spaces, first of all, do they understand the issues of the people they represent? Are they a representation of that group appropriately? Or is it sometimes in the political spaces what would be referred to as tokenism? So that efficient representation is crucial to enable meaningful engagement of young people. And on the side of the stakeholders that are engaging these young people, it's very important to ensure that you're not just ticking a box, ensuring public participation, ensuring young people who are on the table. You're actually incorporating their ideas and listening to their side of the story. And for the young people on their side, you have to ensure that, one, you are engaging in a way that adds value to the table. You're not coming to just, say young people were here, we did this. So you, as a young person, and we've seen this world over, young people have been at the forefront of many, many revolutions. In fact, in this country, we normally say in 1963, at the Lancaster Conference, the Kenyan delegation negotiating for our independence, in quotes, was led by young people. All were in their 20s. We've been at the forefront of meaningful change. But this has been backed up by proper expertise, proper dedication and patriotism all through. So even as a young person, as you seek to be on the table, it's important that you add value to this menu.
And from an outside in, and the legislators are here, they can defend themselves. I know there's one of them is your classmate, but still, have they done enough from your point of view? Looking at how they're engaging in different sectors, and we have a member of parliament and a nominated senator, have they done enough?
I wouldn't want to be the judge in this discussion, but from the engagement that I've had, especially with the young members of parliament through the various caucuses that where they sit. I think one is the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association. Unfortunately, the CEO is not here, as well as on a wider regional scale, the African Young Parliamentarians Network, and many other caucuses that identify with young people. We've seen an attempt, and many of those attempts have been successful or have moved the needle a little bit. We've seen young people lobbying for laws, legislation or bills that are otherwise risky to take up. One of them, I think one of the recent one in Kenya might have been the Whistleblower Protection Bill. Regionally, in our space in East Africa, there's no other country with any bill or any law that covers whistleblower protection mechanisms. So Kenya was at the forefront of this, and this was led by a young member of parliament and, of course, lobbied by young parliamentarians. So in terms of representation, we've seen, some attempts, but then on the ground, what we feel is that young people feel that they need more representation. They need, to be consulted and involved more by their representatives in these spaces.
They need to be involved more. I see how carefully you're treading around that. And Pande, have they done their part? They're here so they can defend themselves. Have they done their part? And you've heard what AC was saying in terms of the challenges that comes with it, because you can't galvanize the numbers in the House and Parliament just because you're a young person or just because you're a woman. You have to have something concrete that then relates to all the other members, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about the vote.
Very well, Trevor. I begin by declaring that in the last elections, I was a candidate. And of course, I stopped at the primaries, but got more involved in the presidential campaigns as the national youth lead for my candidate, the former PM. But one reason why I wanted to be senator is to tackle inclusion. One fundamental thing that we have in this country is exclusion from decision-making platforms. And last time we were here, Trevor, I demonstrated to you that in the Kenyan cabinet today, there is 0 youth in that space. And there is only 1 youth out of the 51 PSs. So that shows you the gap. In Parliament, and I would take the Senate as perhaps the most inclusive, where you have explicitly 2 positions that are reserved for the youth, 1 woman, one man below the age of 35. And that's as far as inclusion goes. Now, our colleagues in Parliament, and I say this with all due respect, have no bills to their names that you'd say that Senator so-and-so or Honorable so-and-so who is youth or who has been representing women interest or the persons with disability has this bill. There is one person that I admire in this country, and that's Governor Sang. As a young senator who went into Senate bill, I think at the age of 28, he had 5 bills to his name, and that's progressive legislation. As a young person in Parliament sitting in legislative space, and your first role is legislation, what laws, what bills are under your name as having proposed or having sponsored? Since 2020, I think, we had been working on something we are calling the Sakaja Bill. The Sakaja Bill was around SME and innovation support, and that is yet to become an act. Who is that young parliamentarian in either houses that is taking up from where Governor Sakaja left? Now, one thing that I wanted to tackle was, I think, should be Section 35 of the County Governments Act on the structure of the county executives. Trevor, county governments, for example, are the best platforms for training or sharpening skills of young people towards meaningful political participation and executive roles. But how many counties have the youth in their executives? It's countable, and I would dare say that it's less than 10 out of the 47. Now, in that composition of the county executive, we are talking about in counties where you have over 16 members of parliament, of the county assembly, probably 10 executive members appointed by governor. Then we are talking about the 2/3 gender rule and inclusion of minority population and so forth. But at the end of the day, governors are using the gender aspect to cater for everybody, to cater for the persons living disability and to bundle the youth in there. So explicit representation in terms of a youth standing for the youth voices, that has been missing. Now, I would still encourage our young parliamentarians that there is really a lot of leeway and a lot of space. There is much to be done in lobbying for youth inclusion, in lobbying for meaningful youth participation, and that must take legislation. So sponsor bills, let's discuss. I'm glad that Senator here is talking about a civic bill that would then support counties. My other issue with counties has always been public participation, and I have always proposed that every county should have what we call the public participation handbook, where as an executive member, you know which bill or which policy or which aspect of county government requires public participation and what is the threshold of public participation. So that even as we make budgets, how do young people contribute into their budgetary allocations? Yeah. We've seen progressive counties like Laikipia, where Governor Nderitu Mureithi established the Laikipia Enterprise Fund. And from a target of 350 million thereabout in terms of loan portfolio, he ended up with an excess of 2 billion. Yeah. That was money that was supporting young people-led enterprises, women-led enterprises, and persons with disability. So inclusion can take the format of at the sub-national level as well, what laws or what strategies are we using to bring in those who are at the forgotten bottom to the fore, so that they are able to access capital, they're able to add up their voices, and they're able to fend for themselves, even without having to sit in those spaces.
All right. Umi, as a young legislator yourself, what have you done to enhance the space for your fellow young people? Because there's the question that Panda is raising, that you haven't brought any bills as young legislators. And it doesn't have to be just you. Even as a team, what bills are you working on as young people that you know you're going to push this as a team?
Yeah. I'll speak to one of the issues that he's raised, which is the legislative process and everything. Like Essie said, it's not easy. And the Senate is even a bit better because of the numbers. But I'm in the National Assembly where we are 300 plus, where each of you has a bill. I put the Quran down when I was sworn in, and I immediately put in the bill for the youth to amend the County Government Act to actually include young people in the Public Service Board, because if you look at the Act itself, it just says these are the number of people that should be in the board, but it doesn't actually pin down that particular clause that says a youth being one of them. So immediately I was sworn in September, I put that into motion. And Trevor, I'll tell you, it actually came back somewhere in, I think, April. And that's because I kept pushing. The
following year.
And I had to follow up.
Yeah.
Because it's not because young people don't want to bring bills or nothing is being worked on. It's the process that goes through. All the way from the first time you bring the bill, it goes to the proposal stage, you take it through the legal team, it comes back to you, you have to go through the committees, the committee takes their time with it, they can decide, one time there's no quorum, so you find yourself whipping members even in the committee, because, members are also busy with other commitments. By the time the committee sends that through, then you have to wait for the publication, go to first. It's a whole process that actually takes time. But before you even get to the committee level, you must have lobbied for that bill to go somewhere. And the challenge is because...
What does lobbying mean?
I mean, you follow up on the bill itself. You don't just propose and sit back and wait for the bill to come back.
So you somehow have to sell the agenda.
You have to sell the agenda.
One at a time.
One at a time. And it's a hectic process because, remember, you are 300 plus, where each of you has a bill. Like, for example, I have 4 bills I'm pushing. I have the Kenya Sign Language Bill, where I'm proposing sign language to be taught because it's a constitutional language, just like Swahili and English, so that we can eliminate the barriers for the deaf community. I have the Youth Amendment Bill to include young people in the public services, because my argument is if you put young people in the public service, then they're able to even influence the hiring process at the county level. I have the bribery bill that talks about eliminating this, the middlemen in government offices, for example, in passports, where you have to pay a broker so that your passport can, move a bit faster. We are losing so much money to corruption. So I'm saying, let's have the expedition money that you can actually legally pay to government so that you can get your government services faster.
So there's an express counter.
Sort of that.
But you pay slightly higher.
But you pay slightly higher, and you have to then remove the middlemen who are at Nyayo House, who are, you know how the process is. So I have all these bills, but by the time it actually comes to the floor, it takes a whole process. For example, the Amendment Act that I was bringing, when I went to the Labour Committee, they said, Umi, this is a beautiful bill, but why only youth? And I had to think, okay, because the gender is already taken care of in the Constitution, where any government body has to have at least 2/3 of representation. And it took some time. And even when I went to the committee itself, I had to find some members to come and support my bill.
So have any of the 4, has any of them come to fruition?
So at least one is coming to the floor very soon for first reading, the amendment itself. The Kenya Sign Language, I'm hoping the committee sits very soon so that we can, because it has a money component to it. Part of it proposes that we have the Sign Language Council like we have the Swahili Council, because it's a language in itself. So maybe once the committee sits down, the budget committee, and they think, okay, it's not too much to ask for, then it can go to the next stage of public.
So having said that and having that in mind, then where does the solution lie? Because the solution doesn't seem to be in more numbers. So even if you had younger legislators with you, they wouldn't help because it's still a rigorous process.
That's why we have bodies like KYPA, where you can lobby as a group. For example, KYPA has up to 60 young members. If I know my bill is coming to the floor and I need this number of votes, I can whip my members and say, come and support me. And that's how we work as a caucus, supporting each other as young people. But the process that it takes to bring a legislative bill right from the start entirely lies on not just how much you aggressively lobby, but even when it gets to the floor, how much support do you have? We saw the bill for Konza, I think, in Senate that failed because it lacked 2 votes. Not because the bill was bad, but because members didn't see much of it. But the bill itself had something, you know, to support the young people. Such situations happen. So the process of, again, restarting a bill will take you another year or so. And mind you, you're not the only member who's sponsoring bills. You have to keep that in mind. Senate, at least their numbers are a bit lower. National Assembly is something else. So it's quite, it's like a, I don't know, it's like a shark.
It's like a shark tank. With all this. Essie, what has been your experience like as you tell us more about this county civic education?
And Trevor, I would like to bring to your attention that I'm a late entrant to the Senate because I came some months later. After the rest had actually, you know, begun, I came in to replace Honorable Soipan Tuya, who joined cabinet. So that, even that being said, recently you saw the Mzalendo rankings. I was ranked 5th most active youth senator and 3rd most active woman senator. So I clearly feel it depends with your strategy. I currently serve in the Senate Health Committee. I'm the Vice Chairperson of the Senate Trade Committee. And in most of my engagement in the Senate, most of the times I raise my issues in terms of statements. Sometimes I also prosecute in committee, and I'm now working on bills. Currently, I have the Protection of Livelihoods bills, in other words, the Street Vendors Bill. I'm also working on the County Civic Education Bill. I'm working on the Powers and Functions bill that is really going to look at more the separation of powers in the counties. And why am I talking about most of the issues to do with counties? Because as a Senate, our mandate is majorly on counties. I think on Tuesday you saw me, I read a statement appreciating the International Youth Week. And members, I actually read it under Standing Order 52.1, which doesn't allow for comment. But other senators really wanted to comment on such an issue. You see, you have to come with issues that appeal to the general population. I even talked about, on Wednesday, I talked about the recovery of the tourism sector in this country under the same Standing Order 52.1, and senators had to demand, the Speaker made a ruling that we normally don't allow comments, but because this is a very hot topical issue, we will allow members to comment. That is how you have to first woo the support of your colleagues. It has to appeal in that when people see, when a senator from Taita Taveta sees this is an issue affecting young people from Taita Taveta, from Kwale, from Kisumu, from Kisii, that's the approach I've taken. When I narrow down to the County Civic Education Bill that I have a lot of interest in, because even since inception of the county government, the County Government Act of 2012 in Article 100 has a provision of county governments having civic education programs, which to date are neither here or there or have never been conducted. So this bill seeks to provide a framework for how civic education should be conducted, and this is between the county and national government. Why? Because an informed citizen is able to make right decisions. And by having this bill, we are actually going to build a culture of people embracing, you know, patriotism, constitutionalism, right from school setups. Trevor, look at a country like India. It's so easy for India to talk about, you know, climate change and people planting trees because children right from school are taking seedlings and planting. So for them, it's a normal. It's actually a normal language. It's not a new thing that we are trying to talk about. So in Parliament, yes, I acknowledge there is a bit of what my colleague is mentioning, but you have to do your things differently. And that's why I said we have to unite and not just about discussing, but taking action. Come back to the bill that I actually mentioned here about protecting livelihoods.
Yeah.
We have so many young people currently. Like in Nairobi, sometimes I walk in the streets and I see young people are very good at playing guitar, some are, and they are entertaining people on the street.
Yeah.
These young people, there needs to be a provision recognizing whatever hustle they are engaging in and protecting them so that they are not being harassed by Kanjo.
Okay.
Because really they have failed to get maybe the other mainstream line and now they are making use of their talent.
Okay.
The country and the government needs to protect them. That's what the protection of livelihood bill seeks to do. We even have these local guys who you see walking, would I call it, I wouldn't say they are magicians, but you see some guys here walking around entertaining people in town. The moment you appreciate that we are able differently, then we as young people will start having platforms.
Okay.
Because I like using my example. My sister here mentioned about tokenism. I don't deny there are such instances. But for someone like me, I attribute my nomination to hard work and, you know, believing in God and consistency. Because I'm someone who didn't know the president. He used to meet me in political rallies in the village. But through my hard work and whatever contributions I was making in the party, because I am the person behind the command centers that we had as the UDA party. For you to get recognition, there has to be tangible work. And that's why I normally encourage young people, whatever small thing you're doing, be very consistent at it. You do not have to be a political leader. You can be very good in other areas you're doing. If I actually make reference to there is a group of young people who are actually rescuing people from the North Rift counties by the name Cheploch Divers Rescue Team. It's a group of very young people. Such people, small efforts need to be recognized. We have several other young people who are engaging in small initiatives, which might not catch the eyes of big people. But it's up to we to take a responsibility and an initiative to highlight whatever small things people are doing. Even I recently actually joined TikTok just to see what other people like me think. And it's been a very good avenue to share whatever little things, and I see people can relate. You have to speak the language of other people.
All right. And Jennifer, now let's talk about corruption. We've really hammered the point on inclusion. Corruption is another issue that comes up all the time for the young people, because that is also another way that most of them are excluded from opportunities, because it depends on how much you can give here and there and what gets what, and it doesn't even matter about merit anymore. What now needs to be done to deal with this monster? Because I know this is entirely your forte. And what have you achieved so far?
Well, thank you for bringing me into my expertise area. So UNODC is the guardian for the UN Convention Against Corruption. I would be remiss if I do not mention on this platform that this year we do mark 20 years of the convention, and Kenya was the first country to actually ratify and put a signature in the convention. So this is a very important year for us, and it will be a great opportunity to actually look back and reflect upon the achievements and the gaps that we have to fill. Now, when it comes to the fight against corruption, from my experience, I feel that young people have a very important role to play. In fact, we believe that the youth might be the last line of defense in this fight, because sometimes when we look at what's happening with the older generations and the levels of impunity that sometimes we experience in our country, you almost lose hope with that generation. But with the younger generations and with what we've been seeing even most recently with the likes of Mercy Tarus and what's happened, you can see that there's that intention to actually do things the right way and live with integrity. Now, when it comes to 60% of your population actually blurring and not considering the normal tribal lines or whatnot, and actually demanding for integrity and calling upon leaders to actually be accountable, that signifies a turning point in our country, and which is what we want to actually invest in, because when you have young people leading the change in the fight against corruption, there'll be actually an opportunity to see some changes. Of course, we've had a lot of rhetoric around the amounts of money that we lose to corruption every year. I know globally we talk about billions, and in Kenya that has been approximated to about a third of our budget. There are no specific figures, but that's a lot to lose if you look at it. And that's money that could go into education, to building classrooms. That's money that can go into investing in agriculture. It's money that can go into investing in social entrepreneurship and areas that actually matter to the youth. So in a way, this actually robs the young people of their future. And if you think of it that way, if you think of it that for every 2 million that's lost Kenya shillings, that could be a wonderful classroom in Mandera. For every billion that's lost, that could be a feeding program, a proper feeding program for a county. If you look at it that way, and what we stand to lose as young people who will inherit the leadership of this country, if not already doing so, we stand a lot to lose. And that's why we are calling upon young people, and that's what we do. We involve them in our programs as UNODC. We ensure that there's meaningful involvement. We ensure that their voices are heard. We ensure that we actually explore the powerhouses that there are in young people. If we do that, we actually stand a chance, because every day there's a scandal in news.
Exactly. That's a reason.
Every day, every day there's something. Every day there's something that comes up. And if you look at it, if you look at it from a young person's perspective, of course they will lose hope. Of course there'll be despair. Of course there'll be some level of apathy, and the feeling of maybe this is the way to go. Maybe this is the only way to actually succeed.
In fact, there was actually research that said most young people condone corruption. In fact, more than by hook or crook, about, was it 50 or 60% of them, saying that they're okay with it as long as they're not caught. And this is where the problem really is, Pandey, because it doesn't matter which form it takes. There's one particular bill that I always talk about, the access to government procurement opportunities, the AGPO bill. 30% of all procurement is supposed to go to young people, persons with disabilities, and women. If that was actualized, then we would have seen an impact by now. But it is not being actualized. But most of it, how then do you exclude the youth from this corruption scourge, and yet they're the majority of the population? There's no way statistically that they can be the ones who are fighting it. It means they're the ones who are fostering it. So how then can the youth be the forefront against corruption?
Trevor, you read my mind, and my first input would be on the AGPO rule. That's one of the inclusion policies, by the way, we have in this country, advancing the rights of youth, women, and persons with disability to access economic opportunities through government procurement. Now, the simple question is, has the National Treasury in this country ever revealed an audit of the implementation of the AGPO rule, either at the sub-national level and how counties are complying, and how semi-autonomous government agencies, ministries and departments are complying? Because that would be the first assessment of whether we are supporting the advancement of young people. But what we know for a fact, and evidence is out there, is that there are people pretending to be youth when it's convenient to be youth. That is by basically using young people to register a company and apply for government procurement, especially in areas where they are reserved. Now, that should stop, because it's one way of, building a cosmetic scenario, pretending to be including youth, but it's not actually happening. Trevor, it's not true that young people advance corruption in this country, but it is true that 75% of young people from research are willing to do anything to succeed. And that is what the conditions have forced them to. That is what lack of opportunities have forced our young people to do. Now, how do we deal with the issue of corruption? It's, for example, funding youth opportunities. And I'll tell you, Trevor, today, that the ministry in charge of youth, the arts and sports is one of the least funded in this country, at about just 20 billion. It could be less than 23 billion, I think, for this fiscal year. Now, do you know how much money we lost between January and March of this year? That is the Q3 of the last fiscal year, in terms of payroll expenses alone. It is said reported by the Control of Budget that 16 billion went into paying people outside payroll, basically ghost workers that have not been included in the government payroll system. Now, this is close to 80% of what we are spending on the youth space in the entire year. Now, if you took that, for example, and invested in the youth fund, which is less than 200 million, what opportunities would you be creating to young people to ensure that they are not motivated to use other means to advance their economic rights and freedoms, but you are actually facilitating? Yeah. So the real issue is create opportunities and meaningful opportunities, facilitate those opportunities. One way of facilitating access to government procurement, Trevor, we've always mentioned and reiterated that could the government use the facilities it has. For example, there is the Hustler Fund, there is the Youth Enterprise Fund, there is the Uwezo Fund. Why don't we have an LSO financing mechanism where, as government, you are showing me the opportunity that is reserved for the youth, but you're also telling me if you get a government LSO, then you can unlock this fund, finance your project, get paid through the same system. The government has a check-off system, and we make money, we progress. So we keep on revolving around these cycles. Implementation of our inclusion policies and advancing the space for young people, or providing just that facilitative role so that we are not motivated to do other things. Yeah. That's the way to deal with corruption. Okay. Yeah.
Umi, what are your thoughts on dealing with corruption, especially even in the National Assembly and the Parliament? Most of you are always accused. In fact, that's why I kept pushing you when you said lobbying. What does lobbying mean? When people hear that from your side.
Not that kind of lobbying. Lobbying pretty much means selling your narrative to your members. Like I gave you the example of my youth amendment bill. Yes. I had to face the committee and I told the members, look, we are actually finding a way to create a solution for the unemployment issue in our country. Let us include young people in the county public service boards. Then that young person will be able to influence at least employment or the appointive process whenever the county is hiring. So the lobbying means you have to convince the members, and it's a cross-cutting issue. Yeah. Members, of course, they would understand, they'd be like, yeah, okay, I also come from my county, youth can get this opportunity. So pretty much that kind of lobbying, not the one you think about. But coming back to the question, I think for me, the buck stops at the leaders of the country, because we have to lead by example. If, for example, today I had a lifestyle before politics, then suddenly my lifestyle changes after politics. That maybe might show young people that, you know what, the only way to, in layman's term, how we say kuomoka is if I join politics. And that's the worst kind of inspiration for joining politics, because politics or this particular space is an opportunity to serve the country. We need to actually sell leadership servant leadership that shows even when you are elected into office, you're able to work for the people, you lead by example, you say no to corruption, and not just saying no to corruption, but just actually acting by it, like, you know, just being a diligent leader, knowing that you're actually employed by the public and not the other way around. So the bossy mentality, the whole mtu mkubwa syndrome that kicks in, all that has to stop, so that you actually have access to the people who've sent you to office, or to the people that you represent. But if we then don't lead by example, we are selling a very bad image. And that's why I say even you as the media have a role to play. Whenever you're highlighting stories on corruption, don't just pick the stories that will sell in the media. Pick on good leadership. The young people who are actually doing good work, but less media highlights it. And yesterday I was in a meeting, I was saying the reason why Tom Mboya today is still glorified in our country is because the media actually told us about his good stories. Even us who are not born during that time read about the good things of Tom Mboya. In another 50 years, who will we read about? Are we going to always read about the scandals? Or are we going to actually read about that one good leader who came in, made a difference? And, you know, so in terms of how we sell, the narrative also plays a key role. If it's always corruption on TV, and it's always leaders are stealing money and this is happening, that young person will be like, you know what, this is a route to go. Let me go in and let me find my way. And they will. And we're going to have leaders, even in the next years, whether you're young or not, as long as you are inspired by corruption, you will be corrupt. Whether you're young, whether you're old, it doesn't make a difference.
A fair challenge, and when we accept that.
My point is, as young people, we have to lead by example. And then the other issue is on, even after, you know, we look at the opportunities as a country, why is government the most lucrative place to work in? Why? That doesn't happen in other places. There are countries where we have people who've made a lot of money from their own talent. For example, in the movie industry, in the film industry, in the talent industry. But we, as a country, have not reached a place where we are harnessing these opportunities. So everybody who graduates school rushes to get into government without adding any meaningful contribution, because, you know, government is the biggest payer, for example. Another lucrative place to work in is the NGOs. But as a country, if those are the key inspiration or the key, what do I call, employment bodies, then we are not really going to go far. So we have to start having the conversation on how can we utilize this talent. Youth are the highest population. We keep talking about it. How are we supporting them? How much money are we putting into the sports industry, for example? How far are we, sending our talents outside? How many football companies are coming to sign our young talents in Kenya? We don't see that often. How many musicians make it out of the country? My colleague here, Senator, has said she meets young people, the gymnasts and the singers in the streets. There's a reason why they're in the streets, because their talent is not being accommodated yet in our industries. Even the few who come up, we are here slapping them with the digital tax. So it doesn't make sense sometimes that whenever we come up to even create these opportunities, even when the government doesn't provide it, we are still coming after the young people. So we need to ask ourselves, why is the government the most lucrative place to work in? Why can't we not aspire to just be a footballer? And you make it in football. I think some time back last year we saw there was a photo that I came across which kept me thinking of young men who are actually playing football together. I think somewhere in Nairobi, South Sea. One of them was not a Kenyan. He was, I think, a white man. And he said, my TBT. But if you look at him, he actually made a breakthrough in his football talent. But then I asked, what happened to the others? Because they seem to all be Kenyans. Most of them didn't make it. Why? Because where he comes from, his country has opportunities for sports. You find countries aggressively investing in the sports center. I have a brother who's very passionate about football, and I can't tell him, go do your degree, because he likes football. And I'm here struggling to find academies that can even enroll him. That is a challenge many young people have. Dreams are dying, hopes are dying. The only thing left is tenders, the tenderpreneur culture, the political, let's be real about these things. Where is the money for this country going? Are we investing in young people? If you look at Talanta Nahela, other than going around counties, and there's nothing yet. I can't see real contracts that we are actually going to sign with footballers in the near future. It's just the same old story of Talanta Nahela, we are going to give you these opportunities.
Yeah.
We don't see them.
So is it a lack of legislation then?
It's not a lack of legislation, honestly. It's a lack of vision collectively. Every government that comes in does things the same way. Okay. Can't we not just get out of the box, think outside the box? We've seen the young lady who does a school feeding program. She sat down, said, you know what, young people, children in schools are not getting food. I will come in and provide food for them. Yeah. Suddenly the government is all over her. Where was government before? Didn't they see that opportunity? Were there budgets for these things? Why was this not happening? Does it take one young person to think outside the box? Those young people are somewhere seated idle. They don't have jobs. We are not giving them the opportunity. And that's why I said, even our politics is about tokenism. For me, how I got into politics was a very aggressive process. I had to campaign. I had to aggressively come out. I came into government. What of that young person who's not interested in politics but has ideas, innovative ideas, for example? Is our innovative budget, so the innovation in our country ready for the ideas of these young people? If we look at what we are doing with the whole Konza thing and the industrial hubs and the innovation hubs, yes, the idea is there, yes, the conversation is there, but are we nailing it? So that when a young person, I'm thinking of that child in Garissa where I come from, who can't access government opportunities, sits down and comes up with an idea, but they don't have internet. The government talks of free internet, I don't see it. When will it come for me to benefit? Okay. Today, students are called to universities. There are places where they ask you to physically drop off the documents. Why? Yeah. It's the fourth industrial revolution. Where is the opportunity of just working from home? Get your document, apply online, the document comes right to your home address. We are not yet there. These are things we can offer. Posta, for example, is dying with little budget. Posta is that government body that can actually do so well in terms of delivery and doing government, delivery of services faster. But the structures in our country, and that's why I keep saying it's not about legislation. We have so many policies in our country. It's not about, are we including young people? No, it's about the vision. Do we have that leader who is going to come out and aggressively make a difference and just say, you know what, this year we are going to run with this thing. We are all over the place. We are doing housing, we're doing climate change, we're doing agriculture, but it's the same government that's cutting down trees. Okay. You know, it not making sense.
Essie.
You know, Trevor, this morning discussion is a typical example of the challenges we are facing. Today's topic was green skills for the youth, but we're digressing so much that I'm even afraid we are perpetuating the, you know, the losing interest in why we need to have youth included in some of these critical discussions. Actually,
my conversation was never really about that. That's the theme for the International Youth Day, which is tomorrow, green skills for youth towards a sustainable
world. Then I would love to bring that bit. I would love to bring that bit in the mix, because youth are most of the people who get the effects of climate change that we are now undergoing. We have so many other proposals being talked about in other countries. But in our country, young people have not been able to embrace this conversation. And the reason why I feel young people who are watching me this morning need to embrace this idea is because the other time I heard the president talking about this country going to earn from carbon credits. I am looking forward to young people going to be part of those who will be earning from carbon credits. And this will not come by a young person not participating. We now have the climate change amendment, an amendment that has been brought, which is the climate change bill of 2023. I hope you've had an opportunity of looking at it, which provides for members of parliament across the constituencies we have in this country are going to have a provision that gives financial support to young people who will be engaging in planting trees and initiatives related to that. The government is also mainstreaming digital skills, which is where a majority of our young people lie. Our young people, most of them are not in things like tea farming, coffee farming. Most of them are on the digital platforms. And I'm happy that this government is taking a lot of interest on matters to do with ICT. Before we came, the Kenya Kwanza government came to power, we only had about 300 services, digital services available online. Now we have more than 5,000 of those. And through the same legislations which are coming, there is going to be provision at the CDF kitty to have those digital hubs in constituencies. I want to urge young people that the moment we have this actualized, they should take up such spaces.
That's fine.
And
how do you deal with corruption? In
the issue of corruption, let me tell you, Trevor.
Yeah.
And I would want to disagree with the people who say that young people are corrupt. What do you expect if you say young people are corrupt and they are hearing money is being looted by the older ones? What do you want them to do? That does not mean they are corrupt, because a young person, even before they begin, you're already disadvantaged. Where is the young person even going to get that money to give, maybe to get whatever offers they want? So someone who has no money to even give can't be corrupt. So that's a very wrong notion. Yeah, most of the young people are struggling. Actually, the messages I get on a daily basis, sometimes someone is like, can I even sell a piece of land for me to do this? And I'm like, you don't need to do that. If such an opportunity arises, just apply and I'll make follow-up on your behalf. You don't need to, because I personally didn't get this platform by giving any money. It's people out there who saw whatever abilities I had. But when we talk about the issue of loss of public resource, public funds and corruption, it needs to be we need to, as Kenyans, we need to have a culture. Yeah. I said patriotism is slowly dying away. The moment you're so patriotic about your country, even your behavior, the manner in which you handle issues will be very different. Okay. When we come to this digital age, and we are seeing so many young people speaking about the issues that they feel they are unhappy about, that's one way of putting people on the spot. Okay. You know, you're not going to defend people who are taking advantage of young people just because either they're on your side or they are your relatives or you're on the same political divide. You know, it doesn't make sense. I said when it's issues affecting young people, whether you're in Kenya Kwanza, whether you're in Azimio, they are cutting across. You have to stand up and speak about those issues. And it's very sad that for a long time we have had cartels and, you know, people who are camouflaging as young people to get opportunities. We have laws, enough laws, that are providing for young people to be in those spaces. Yeah. But there has to be a deliberate attempt for going for people who are perpetuating these actions. You see, if you are young people in that spot and you whistleblow that there's someone here who is not a young person, do you think that person will be spared? But we will not be in all those spaces to whistleblow. Yeah. Therefore, as leaders, there needs to be a deliberate move. Okay. Right now, the government is talking about county aggregation industrial parks that are going to come. And I'm looking forward to young people having spaces in those parks that will be coming about in the counties across. Apart from we speaking, governors and the line CECs in those departments should have a deliberate move to incorporate young people. So most of these issues, Trevor, in as much as we will speak about them, there needs to be action on those same things. Okay. Like I would give an example. There are several young people who are engaging in the boda industry. People will say, oh, those guys are very reckless in the manner in which they drive. But you see, a boda person just graduated, no job. The easiest thing they saw, let me go and learn how to ride the motorbike, then I come on the road. So the best thing we do is not to castigate whatever they are doing. As a leader, come up with a program to enlighten them on road skills so that they match with the rest who are qualified. That way.
Yeah.
But if it's these normal conversations of criticizing with no tangible action, we will always be at this point.
Okay.
Young people are not corrupt because, after all, they do not have any money to offer.
Is that true, Jen?
Before you give it back, maybe something I would want to add on.
Yeah.
I think if you look at all the plans the government is having, very progressive, really good, but my advice would be, let us speak on one issue at a time.
Okay.
Because if you look at how I come from the background of civil society, in the development world, every year we pick a theme. For example, this year they decide we are going to entirely focus on immunization, and they invest money and they lobby and they, do all that. As a country, we have, I know top of my head, things that the president is really focused on doing. It's housing, it's on, what is it called? The creating jobs and through the industries and everything.
Yeah.
But my advice would be finding a structured way of implementing it.
Okay.
Because if he's able to think of all this with all the expertise around him, get the support, I'm sure he's going to make a difference and something will give. But for me, my advice to this particular government would be, let us at least pick on one thing so that in 2027, when we head to the ballot, because we're talking of voter apathy, we're talking of people losing patriotism, we've seen even communities asking for cessation. Those are not conversations we need to have in our country. What is leading Kenyans to go to a point where they feel like they are not proud of their country anymore? So much money is being looted. When I'm a young person seated here, I'm only able to be confident today because I have a job. But what will happen to me in 2027? Reality of the thing is, if things don't change, the more things don't change, the more they remain the same.
Okay.
In 2027, if things don't change, we are still going to be stuck. We are going to not be inspired.
Okay.
So my goal and my advice to the government is, pick on one thing. If it's the issue on, for example, creating, because it's a government that ran on the campaign of youth and hustlers, right? What are you doing for hustlers? You're talking of very brilliant, the digital space, creating jobs for them. It's a very brilliant idea. But the hows of doing it is where now they need support.
Okay.
We need to engage young people in the conversation,
Okay.
give them this advice, find a structured way of implementing, and realistic goals, not big goals of saying, we'll give you jobs in a different country, 1,000 jobs. It's not realistic.
All
they
right.
don't even need those jobs. They just need that opportunity.
Okay.
Give them that opportunity. So
All
as
right.
government, let us pick on one issue, focus on it. Once we make some progress, then we're able to go into the next step. So far, good steps, but the implementation is where we really need to nail it.
Okay, so you want to respond really quick. I don't want to get straight into a political
I don't want to go so much, but you see, we had priorities.
Yes.
And we just didn't have one priority. We had priorities in the health sector.
Yeah.
Right now, we are amending matters to do with NHIF. We had priority on the, the finance area.
Yeah.
To reduce loss of money and, such kind of things. For the first time, like county governments were able to get their disbursement very early. Look at a county like Bungoma, the governor there decided to pay all pending bills. So you can't lie on one side and we have priorities. You will feed people, but people who get sick and get no treatment.
Okay.
So as a government, you have to balance across all the line priorities, which we are doing very well, Trevor. You saw even the reforms in the education sector that are coming up. So by the time you have a person who's well-fed, good health care, they can then make decisions.
All right. Jen, we're talking about solutions here going forward, and it's on this corruption issue. And as you were saying, that it's just been talks and more talks and policies. What are the more tangible solutions going forward? What have you explored as UNODC? Has it worked? And what more needs to be pushed?
Well, the fight against corruption is multifaceted.
Yeah.
It will require a multi-stakeholder approach, starting with the youth, who we are celebrating today, and specifically the young leaders who are seated here with me today, all the way to anti-corruption institutions such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, who we work very closely with. So we need to strengthen the capacities of such institutions to enable them fight and prevent corruption more effectively. as well as having that top-down approach in terms of giving and enhancing the Kenya national vision in this particular area of addressing corruption. Because when it starts from the top, and I would like to appreciate that, especially in this government, we've had that strong commitment and that strong voice right from the top, saying that this is a no-no. Corruption is a no-no for this time.
Yeah.
So once we have all the combination of all those initiatives, we'll be able to see some steps forward.
Okay.
Not saying that we haven't made any great strides in the fight against corruption for Kenya. I mean, since 2003, we now have independent bodies actively working to address and combat corruption. We have this as a national conversation every now and then.
Yeah.
We have strong oversight and watchdog bodies such as Parliament and the media, and so on and so forth. Okay. So there are some steps we've made, and with the inclusion of the large 60% stakeholder of the youth,
yeah.
I think that we can make great progress.
AC doesn't believe most of them are corrupt.
Then, yes and no.
Surely, how would people with no coin
but corruption
bribe their way? They have nothing to give.
Okay.
Corruption is not just about bribery.
Yeah.
There's a lot more.
Yeah.
And for the yes bit would be the value system deficit that we talk about. When we talk about our national values, when we talk about commitment to transparency, accountability, the truth is that there are surveys out here, both from civil society and national government bodies, that demonstrate that a large percentage of the population, not specifically, of course, the youth, but a large percentage of the population, when given the opportunity to, would actually be corrupt. Okay. So that's the truth, and we cannot shy away from that as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Bande, solutions going forward? Solutions,
Trevor, we're always in action, young people in action. And like the Secretary General, UN, Antonio Guterres says, humanity depends on the boundless energies, ideas, and contributions of the youth everywhere. Mm-hmm. So in this year, as we talk about the International Youth Day, my challenge to young leaders, elected or not elected, is let us get involved in providing support, mentoring young people. On our part, what we are doing as the Forgotten Bottom Millions, we are collaborating with other partners from elsewhere across Africa, LEAP Africa, who are here from Nigeria to work with us on the International Youth Day. And tomorrow we'll have what we call the SDG and climate action. So we'll be having a procession from Ngong Race Course to the Ngong Road Forest, and in the Lenana block we'll be doing planting of trees, and then we'll have what we call the youth rally. So I'm inviting my colleagues, the elected, other young people out there. Let us contribute into conserving our environment, but let us contribute meaningfully in adding our voices to spaces where we really want them to be. Okay. But my invitation to the president, those who are close to him, says that he's a very honest man who keeps his word. I think one word that he's failed to keep is his promise to the hustlers, inclusion of young people from cabinet, I repeat, from cabinet and decision-making platforms. Okay. Yeah.
All right, I'll take some quick feedback, then I'll come to all of you for closing remarks as we wind up on this conversation. And Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring that up on screen and see what you're saying online here in regards to this conversation around the youth empowerment. Engineer Lazaro says youths are fully used only in armed struggle in the continent. Decision makers still remains wazee affairs. Youth should embrace change and push their colleagues to the decision-making table. Okay. Sir Nixon says the youth must have the courage to be innovative, to change old ideas and practices so that they may direct their power toward good state-of-the-art ends that will benefit everyone or everything. Okay. Lilian Sioe, Honorable Lilian Sioe, says, on behalf of myself, on behalf of the people of Trans Nzoia, and on behalf of the government of Kenya, I want to wish all youth in the country a happy International Youth Week, culminating into International Youth Day, remarked tomorrow. Okay. Kipto Ruto says International Youth Day beckons profound dialogues spanning the spheres of potent educational empowerment, intricate nuances of mental well-being, existence of climate mitigation, imperative egalitarian avenues, and the pivotal acquisition of digital adeptness. Okay? Okello Mwalimu says the tired notion that youth are leaders of tomorrow is one of the major enemies to youth progress, especially in leadership spheres. Youth all over the world should take full advantage of their numerical strengths to push for changes in governance that support their vision. Okay? Brian Chemwa says we need to create youth advisory boards, incorporate youth in policy decisions, provide civic education, promote mentorship opportunities, lower the voting age, and support youth-led initiatives. To Honorable Kinyuri Esther, Masaimara comrades are proud of you. Okay? Dr. Goa Moja says youth are being sidelined every time. Youth have really tried their best, but the people on top are pushing them down. Babu Michael says the youth of this country are only needed and required during hard labor jobs, e.g. kazi mtaani, and now affordable housing. But in the political, legislative, and executive decision-making tables, they can't be given the opportunity at all. It is sad. Abok Alvin says, I totally agree with Honorable Kinyuri Esther that youth should stand, unite, and fight for their spaces because it won't come on a silver platter. I actually admire Honorable Essie resilience and stoicism to rise where she is today. Okay. Closing remarks. Essie, I'll start with you.
I'll still go back to what I said. On matters corruption, this needs to be an African conversation because at times we are victims of the whatever the other people in the other continents think about. So away from just having conversations, we need to take action and deliberate action. That's the moment we are going to liberate ourselves. The youth can actually have a revolution. And Trevor, you know, the passport of a revolutionary has no expiry date. That's where we should be.
Okay. Umi, closing remarks.
I think, like I said, we, number one, as leaders, we have to serve by example. If we are talking of bring an end to corruption, then number one, we should not be corrupt. So that's a message we sell. And then as a country, it's time we see heads turning. Like until the day we see people being prosecuted for corruption, until the day we see leaders being barred from running for offices because of having corruption cases, that's the only way we are going to start the actual process of getting rid of corruption. Until then, if we keep seeing corrupt leaders being rewarded, then we'll have young people being inspired to be corrupt. So the ball is in our court.
Okay. Pande?
Very well, Trevor. The International Youth Day and, of course, the National Youth Week, which we've been marking since Monday and ends tomorrow, gives this country an opportunity to reflect on where we are and what we need to provide in terms of solutions to the youth space. Like I opened, we are faced with the urgency of now to deal with the crisis of the youth, and let us not keep the rhetoric about the youth bulge being a ticking time bomb. Let us act on addressing the youth bulge. It is creation of employment opportunity, it is inclusion in decision making, it is building the space and the platform for young people to voice their concerns and to be meaningfully engaged in spaces where they make decisions and transform their own courses. So I want to invite again, once again, young people to participate in their own rights, in their own capacity, in courses that advance their rights, courses that advance the independence of young people, that also hold the governments to account at all levels. Thank you.
All right. Jen, closing remarks.
Yes, mine is a reminder to young people, specifically Kenyan young people, that we are powerhouses and we must see ourselves as that, as powerhouses and not as victims. And to all other stakeholders, from government to development partners, private sectors, and so on, we must continue to ensure meaningful engagement of young people. We have the largest population of young people at any point in history, and this is truly a resource that we can tap into. So this is a day to actually capture that and embrace the potential for the youth.
All right. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Honorable Essie Okenyuri, nominated Senator. Honorable Mulher Harun, nominated MP. I hope I get that right. Jennifer Githu, Anti-Corruption Specialist, UNODC. And Philip Pande, Youth Inclusion Advisor. Santeni sana for making time this morning ahead of the International Youth Day, which is tomorrow. This theme is Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World. All right. Up next, DJ Travis and Ben Sue on the decks. Those who can dance will dance. Those of us who can't will just go and sleep. All right? Bye for now. My name is Trevor Ombija.